whether you're a musician or an artist, like a visual artist or whatever that might be. And today's episode number, I don't know what it is, 90, episode number 95,
Yes.
was a request actually that came from someone in our last episode where we were talking about colleagues and collaboration. So today we're going to talk about authenticity in branding. So not even authentic branding, but authenticity in branding and all the ways that you can show up as yourself when you're telling people who you are and what you do. Welcome to our show.
Yeah. Make sure you hit the like button if you're liking what you hear, and hit the subscribe button. We're at 703 subs, I believe, which is fantastic. We appreciate you all for watching and coming through. But yeah, authenticity and branding. I feel like a lot of us, myself included, hate the word branding, but it's important and actually, something that you can take advantage of in this kind of age that we're in. So we've kind of spread out this conversation that you can find bits and pieces of authenticity and branding in our previous episodes, but an actual focus on it here, I think, is a fantastic idea.
So I think one of the places to start is authenticity is one of those words that gets thrown around all the time. And maybe people aren't really clear what it means or how it's applied in practice. And so Sto, how do you think about authentic? Do you have a working definition of authenticity? And for those of you who are watching, please feel free to drop it in the comments if you have a working when we're saying, what does it mean to be authentic in branding? What does that actually mean or look like for folks?
Yeah, I do think the definition, I guess, can be different for everybody depending on what your goals are and stuff like that. But for me personally, it's just about being yourself, and not and I think we can talk about this a bit later, but it's really giving yourself permission to be your full authentic self, regardless of where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're making music, it doesn't matter if you're painting, it doesn't matter if you're training people at the gym, it doesn't matter if you're a marketing consultant. Authenticity, I feel is just being fully yourself. Now that doesn't mean you have to spill everything, that's a part of your life and stuff like that. But I think it's just being yourself and being so wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think it's I would take it even a step further. I think what we're really talking about is how can you remain true to yourself? And the tension comes from, there's all these things that I think creatives are told to do this and be like this and do that. And if you want to get followers, you have to. But a lot of that stuff just doesn't feel true. I don't want to get on TikTok and dance. If I did that, it would be so inauthentic to who I am. And so there's a tension there between doing what you are told is the thing to do to make it versus showing up in ways that feel natural to you. Same with what we've been talking about over the course of our last few episodes, where you can talk about the things that you want to talk about rather than remaining silent because remaining silent is the thing. And so I think understanding what that means, because I think it's really easy to say be yourself, and people can be themselves and still feel inauthentic in how they show up or what they're sharing. And so I think that piece of it's really about, so I think authenticity and branding starts with being really clear in yourself about what are your values, what are your deal breakers, what are your edges, what are the things that you are open to doing, what are the things that maybe you'll play with, and what are the things that you will never ever want to do. And it might be, I will never ever work with the cops, or it might be, I will never ever do a TikTok dance, or it might be, I will never ever, whatever it might be. But deciding for yourself what your foundation is. Because once you've made that decision for yourself as an artist, and this is true in negotiation, what are your deal breakers? What are your soft yeses? What are your hard no's? The more you have that clarity in yourself, then the easier it becomes to decide how you will market and how you will tell that story. But you have to be clear with yourself about who you are, who you are, and how you want to be. before that goes out into the world. And I think a lot of artists skip that conversation with self in an intentional way, or they assume that they're like, well, I know how I want it, but then they haven't really thought through the details. And so for me, that's the starting point.
Well, and excuse me, notice how like a lot of that is not just like the type of music you make or like specific to your industry. Like it's about your values. It's about your morals. Like Nora said, the things that you are willing to do, things, you know, you're not, and the things that are just absolute deal breakers. So it's not just, when we say authenticity, even from a branding sense, it's not just, oh, I sound like XYZ, or I, you know, fit in with this circle of people. Like, yes, that's important. We're not saying otherwise, but like, it's so much more than just what the product that you're putting out or the art that you're putting out, and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I see is people think that they're being authentic, but they're really performing. And what I mean by that is like they're performing what they think it means to be an artist rather than just like being an artist, right? They're performing what they think is authenticity rather than just being authentic. And I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say, but I've seen especially in music, I've seen so many people like take on the characteristics of being an artist rather than just simply like being who they are and letting it be natural. And it's a subtle little difference, but your audience can tell. Your audience can tell when you're comfortable on a stage. Your audience can tell when you're speaking from the heart. Your audience can tell when you're shooting that video because you want to communicate something versus because you think you have to make content. And so it's really like such a subtle thing, but if you show up in ways that feel true to you, that gets communicated, especially when people are consuming thousands and thousands of reels and content and messages from other people a day. Subconsciously, we become really good at telling this is true and this is not true. This is real and this is not real. And so rather than faking the funk of like, oh, look, I worked with an artist once and we went to an open mic and he read at an open mic. And then when I saw his Instagram later, it was like, thank you for having me. It was as if this open mic had invited him out to play or had invited him out to perform. And it was so untrue and inauthentic, but he felt like he needed to perform the fact that like there was desire and invitation and clout versus just being like, yo, I did an open mic and that's something I'm not, right? Like those moments. And I think part of what I'm trying to get at is like, there is a vulnerability in being authentic. And part of that vulnerability, right, and authentically branding yourself. And part of that vulnerability is in showing people that you might not be as big as you want to be, that you might not have as much followers, or you might not have as much fans, or you might have performed to an audience where there was only 3 people. Like, it's okay. And when you try to hide those things, it comes across really cringy because people can tell.
Well, I was gonna ask you just like how many times have you heard from an artist like straight up where they say like, I feel like I have to do XYZ as an artist versus actually just being myself. Like I swear I can't tell you how many phone calls I've been on where artists have been like, yeah, I feel like I have to do XYZ versus actually being myself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that kind of perfectly transitions us into actual branding. And for me, it's just, there's only one you out here. No one can replicate who you are, what you do, what you believe. Like it's impossible. There's only one you on the planet. And so piggybacking off of the authenticity piece that we spoke about earlier, when you pull in all that stuff and again, it takes time to like actually figure out like, okay, who am I even outside of whatever it is I'm pushing, whatever art that I'm pushing and stuff like that. And so, you know, when you, the branding piece is just understanding that like your unique self and how whatever it is that you're talking about. It doesn't matter if it's art, it doesn't matter if it's, again, like something you're standing for or something that you're promoting in general. All of that is part of your branding. And so being authentic in that automatically separates you from everybody else that's faking out here. And like we just talked about, we've all seen it. We've all seen people who, whether they're successful artists or not, where they embellish or, again, are being more performative than authentic. Like, and like Nora said, people can tell the difference, especially these days. And so when you really harness who you are and you're authentic in that, I genuinely don't think there's a way to lose. Like, yes, is it a slower climb or whatever? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you're bringing in people that actually like you for you and what you bring to the table, even outside of whatever music you're making or product you're pushing out. We've been talking about this between Instagram lives and episodes and stuff like that. Like, outside of whatever you're pushing and creating, like, people see what you're standing for. People see what platforms you support. People see all of that is part of your brand. And so, like Nora said, whether you choose not to speak on certain things or you choose to speak on certain, like, that is all part of your brand. And so being authentic in that, like, brings more authentic people around you. And so I just, when you are genuinely 100% yourself in all of this, I genuinely don't think there's a way that you lose.
It's like part of how people read both branding and authenticity is not just one thing. It's a collection. It's the consistency of looking at your collective of actions, decisions, behaviors throughout time. So one action in and of itself isn't going to really change anything. But when you consistently show up in a way that's true, then that's how people are going to pick up the brand for you. It's also like when we talk about, and I'm going to share this and let's see if it works. These are my keys to authentic branding. You have to figure out who you are. You have to be really clear about that and make that decision for yourself. And not just like, oh, I'm a rapper, right? Not like the label, but who you are. I'm a caring, anti-capitalist radical trying to make music accessible to everybody. Like, who are you at your core? What do you do? Which is, what can people expect from you? I do coaching and I offer consulting for creatives. I produce a hip hop festival. I'm an engineer, whatever. Who are you? What do you do? And then what makes you different from everyone else? These three things, these three decisions and clarity that you have then gives you that kind of foundation that I was talking about earlier of grounding yourself so that then everything that you do becomes communicated from this piece of clarity, becomes communicated from, you know what I mean, comes from this piece. So, oftentimes with my clients, I give homework. If y'all are watching, here's your homework, is to sit down and answer these three questions. Who are you? What do you do? And what makes you different from everyone else? Because that differentiate, right? There's a million people who are making music, but what's the thing that you do that makes you, and that might be the emotional piece that makes that connection between you and audience. So really, like, take some time and write about this. Maybe you ask your fans to answer this question for you. Maybe you sit down with your management team and make sure you all are on the same page about this. But this can help really think about what is it that you're communicating. And then when you communicate it, one of the challenges that I see a lot in what makes things come off inauthentic is people feel like they have to be so perfect and so curated. And that's not true. And I'm not saying you have to put like all your drama and all your trauma out there for people. Definitely no. And that's a whole other conversation about, like, you hold the emotional space. So you don't want to trauma dump on your fans. You don't want to like overshare. But when you share the imperfect, when you share the messy, when you share the ugly, the difficult, that's where people see the vulnerability, and that's where intimacy grows. And ultimately, when we're talking about authenticity, it's also a conversation about building intimate connections with our audiences. And so if all you do is pretend like it's beautiful and perfect all the time and hyper curated and the lighting is good and da 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 da, that's not realistic, and that's not real, and that's not genuine. And so thinking about what are the ways that you can make some of what's invisible visible, the hardship, the stress, the work you put in, then people get to see a more full picture of you, and that makes the storytelling and the branding more authentic.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Nora said, it's not these days, it's not even just fans are getting bombarded by artists, they're getting bombarded by people and businesses and corporations and ads all day long, that it does not stop. And so you automatically separate yourself from all of that garbage by being your authentic self. And one thing of pushback I always get is, well, I don't want to tell people all my business. They're fans. They're not my friends. They're not my family. And like, we're not saying to again put literally every single thing that's going on in your life out there, but it's like showing, and I tell this to clients all the time. It's like it humanizes you. Like that's all it's about. Like when you're on stage and you're doing all these things and you have exponentially more followers than your fans are already making all these wild assumptions about what your career looks like. And so when you bring in that authentic piece and you show, we've been talking about this for years at this point, but when you show, again, not even just what's going on behind the scenes in the studio, but what's going on in your actual life to an extent, that allows people to see like, oh, because like some of you have no idea. Some people already think that you've made it and think that you've blown up, and you're performing and you're working with legends and you've got an entire discography. They make all these assumptions, but when you show your authentic self and show like, yo, yeah, I just killed that show, but also I had to work X amount of time. I had to do this, that, and the other, just to get on this stage, just to put out this project. It's mad different.
I want to share this question that News Elf is asking, how do you be authentic when the popular branding strategy is authenticity and everybody is talking about authenticity? If you've already answered this before, forgive me for missing it. All good. In other words, when everybody is saying they're being authentic, how do you actually do it well? It's a great question. And I think this is part of, like, audiences are smart and audiences can, like, we can feel the difference, right? You can tell the difference between someone who is like authentic as a brand versus authentic as genuinely authentic. It's just the way that they and I know this is maybe not a satisfactory answer, but you've
seen it.
But you've seen it. And it's the subtle things like how everything is hyper curated. It's when someone tells you they're authentic versus just being authentic. It's when you look at that person's content or whatever it might be, are you feeling connected to them? And so the difference is there's authenticity without vulnerability. And then there's, which is like the branding, right? That's like pretend authenticity. That's like this popular strategy you're talking about. And then there's authenticity with vulnerability. And authenticity with vulnerability hits differently in our nervous systems. We recognize it differently. It opens up our compassion and our empathy. And that's when that bond between artist and audience clicks in. And so that's that difference. And the ways that that can show up, and that can show up is when you share about, hey, I was in the studio and I kept fucking up. Or, you know what I really love is my dog. And here's me and my dog just being really cute together. Or I'm really struggling with putting myself out there with these gigs, but here's what I'm doing to get over it. There's still, like, you're not putting your therapeutic trauma on, right? Like, you're not sharing with the audience anything that your therapist knows, but you're sharing just a little bit of what you've gone through to put this art out, because then they understand what the art means to you. They understand. Y'all have heard me use the metaphor about like being in the kitchen and cooking. And it's the difference between, like, essentially, News Elf, like what you're asking, right? It's like the difference between going out to the fast food joint, buying a bunch of takeout and putting it on pretty plates, versus if you're in the kitchen and you've been cooking all day and you've been seasoning and you've been spicing, and then people can taste the difference. And if you can show that you've been in the kitchen cooking and you let them smell and see, you know, and see what you went through, that food is going to hit so much different than if all you've done is like emptied out a takeout container and put it and said, here's the finished meal. It's not even about the finished product. It's about the process and the journey that you take your audience on so that they understand the context of that finished product. And so and it's more work. It's more intense. It's a little more intimate, but that's going to be that difference between like authentic, you know, like I think about it like authentic, like a brand versus authentic, like genuinely. And that's when most of you at this stage, right? Like most of you aren't doing huge shows, don't have huge numbers, which is fine. But those intimate connections are going to be the kind of conversions that you want, because that's how you build a fan base that will spend money on you, that will give you their social capital, that will talk to their friends about you, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I just, I don't worry about the popular branding strategy, because the reality is, we really want to get into it. We've been talking about authenticity in branding for years at this point. And I said this last year. I told y'all the industry was going to start playing like, oh yeah, like authenticity is the way to go. And now you can see some of the curated stuff that we've been saying some of this stuff for years. Just show the authenticity is showing what you're already doing, showing and talking about how you already think. Like, and I get it. I used to be the guy where it's like, I don't want to show myself out there like that and whatnot. But I promise you, it is the reason some of y'all are even in here is because we've been authentic for years. We're not out. We've never faked the funk. We've always been, regardless of the numbers, regardless of the comments, the likes, the dislikes, whatever. We've always been our authentic selves. And that's why we have 700 of y'all subbing in and listening and stuff like that. And so it all comes down to like, it's just stop worrying about what the industry is doing and just be like, it sounds corny because we can't teach you how to be yourself. We can't. And that's a journey. Part of that. And again, we talked about this at the top. It's like, it's not just about the music. That's why the inner work is important. And like, that's work that you're doing your entire life. We're constantly trying to figure out ourselves and stuff like that. Right. But once you actually do so, and then put that out there for people to see, like, again, humans understand genuine connection versus, oh, you're just posting this to try to sound cool, or you're just posting this to try to go viral or whatever. People can tell the difference. And so when you are just showing what you're already doing, that's why when it comes to content, we've never said, hey, hop on TikTok and do some skits. If that's not what you're into, don't fucking do it. But a lot of y'all, are looking for these popular strategies and trying to cut corners and shortcut the algorithm. The easiest way to do that and to sustain that consistently and not have it be this huge high moment, and then you're like, well, wait, what happened? I went viral, but nothing changed, is yourself, by being your authentic self. Those viral moments, those are going to come in naturally. But the people that stick around are the people who see what you're doing, what you're about, even outside the music. They see who you are as a person. And again, I use this example all the time. Think of some of your favorite artists. You don't just like them because they dropped a banger. There's more to that. Their story, the journey that they take. And that's why Nora said earlier, it's not just about the end product. It's not just about the album. It's the journey that you've taken to get there. It's not just about, hey, I was in the studio and I cooked up. Like, definitely post that stuff. But it's also about hey, I also had to work a ton of hours before I could even get to the studio. Like, that's authentic. And it shows relatability with your audience, because your audience is also busting their ass out here. And so instead of having them look at your perfectly curated IG file that says, I work with this person and I did a show with this person and I got all these followers and every ball right now, when we all know that's not the case, like, show the real side of your work, the real side of who you are as a person, not just the final product. That's authenticity.
You're really what, like, branding is relationship building. It's really just relationship building. And when you think about your closest relationships, it's not the person who's always like, everything's great, I'm so good, here's all the wonderful things. It's the person who's like, you know what, like, here's what I went through, here's where I'm at now, but yo, last week was really rough. And that's where the closeness happens. I'm curious, and y'all, if you're still watching with us, we're 25 minutes into this episode. If you haven't yet, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But if you have any comments or thoughts, drop them in the chat, because we're here to answer your questions. That's the whole idea behind office hours. So don't be shy about telling us what you think or what's on your mind. So I'm curious if you have an example of when, like, you've been authentic and how it's worked out for you. Because what I think about is, like, before, we're almost 100 episodes into office hours, but when we started, this shit made me so nervous. So nervous. And did we start during quarantine, like pandemic days?
Something like that,
right? So, like, I wasn't in the best, like, setup. Sto and I were watching some of our old episodes, and, like, it was a little chaotic. And I hated being on camera. And I would get on at the beginning of every episode and be like, y'all, I am so anxious. Like, being on camera makes me so anxious. And it was true and it was authentic. And I did it for me. I didn't do it to, like, get sympathy, but for me to name my anxiety made it easier for me to then be able to get through an episode. And over the years, one of the feedback that I've gotten from folks is how, like, reassuring that was to hear someone, because they'd be like, I get so anxious, I get so nervous before I get on screen, but I had never heard anyone say it. And so that is such a small example of where, and it's not like it's easy for me to be like, I'm anxious.
Right.
Now I'm much more comfortable with it. But at that time, it was such an example of how a little bit of my vulnerability brought people closer to me, made people more comfortable with office hours, especially when our whole thing here is to be like, ask the questions, just talk about what you're struggling with, tell us, like, where you're challenged in the industry. So if that's what I'm asking my audience to do for us, I also have to lead by example. And so that, like, sometimes I think it's easy to be like, people think like, oh, I'm being authentic, but sometimes offering little examples like that, maybe for me, are helpful to hear. And so I'm curious for you, if you have something that comes up for you as you think about how authenticity has worked out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it all the time, because it's like the bases that we've built, whether here on IG or otherwise, like that, the only reason aside from, like, obviously, like, the knowledge and education, is just because I've been authentic. I tell almost every client that I work with, it's like, if we were just out here, work with us, get a website, newsletter, pay us, half of y'all would not be here. The only reason why a lot of y'all are here is because we've been vulnerable over the years. We've spoken out on issues and talked about our hobbies, and stuff like that. And so I've always seen my entire kind of career in consulting like that, because I used to be very nervous about actually speaking about what I'm dealing with and what I'm into and what's bothering me, and stuff like that. But it's like, I can't tell you how many people is like, oh yeah, like, I actually saw you talk about this, or I saw you, actually, I'm sure you have too. I've had a few people after our AI episode be like, yo, that's a big example of us standing on what we believe in. And despite, because, like, seriously, there's people probably watching this right now that love AI, but, like, we're never going to endorse that. And that's authentic to us, because we a number of reasons, but I'm not turning this into an AI episode, but, like, it's between talking about video games, being against AI, like, those are two radically different kind of sides of the spectrum there. But that authenticity, has allowed me to connect with all types of people all over the place that aren't just into the same things that I'm into, but also standing for the same things that I'm standing for. And so, again, it goes back to some of the other episodes we've had over the weeks, where it's like, even outside of your music, your fans see and understand what you're saying and what you are choosing not to say in some cases. And so that authenticity is important.
Yeah. I mean, I think another example of our authenticity, because it doesn't always have to be so heavy and serious, is when we talk
Exactly.
about housewives.
Hmm.
Like, and just so that folks have it, our AI episode is episode 91. In case you want to go back and watch that, because that pissed a lot of people off. But like, it doesn't have to be like so serious and like heavy. It could be the fun, quirky things. Like, pick
Right.
2 or 3 things that you care about. And it could be video games, it could be anime, it could be nature, it could be animals. And so, like, one of the things Sto and I,
Photography, bird watching, reading, cooking, vinyl collection, like
yeah. So, like, one of
it's
the things
endless.
I bond over is Real Housewives. You should have heard our conversation yesterday where we were deeply debating Monique versus Candace in Real Housewives of Potomac. Would love to hear your thoughts on that, by the way, because I am 100% like supportive of Candace, and Sto, for whatever reason, loves Monique. But this is the stuff that, like, maybe you don't come to watch two like hip hop heads who are giving music business advice talk about housewives, but it's true to who we are. And in doing that, like, you see how my personality softens a little bit, and you see another side of Sto that you hadn't seen before. And in the over time, right? Because, like I was saying, branding and authenticity don't get communicated in one interaction. Over time, you get a full picture of who I am, and you get a full picture of who Sto is. And then you get to know us a little bit. And then you get to, maybe you care about us. Maybe you start to like us. Maybe you start to trust us. Maybe we give you good information. And that's where that connection happens. Sto is trying to keep all his thoughts about Monique in. You see what he's doing.
I'm absolutely steaming. Oh my God.
It's a whole other episode. We're going to do a whole other episode. But y'all, please tell us in the comments if you're into Housewives. I know some of y'all are, because those are some of our most popular episodes.
Yeah.
Enough, like, those are the episodes that we get the most engagement and comments and feedback about.
I'm like connected to a few YouTubers, housewife YouTubers, because of our housewife episodes. So
what? I didn't know that. So anyways, tell us your housewives' opinions. But the too long, as we come up on 30 minutes for today, like, the too long short summary of it is that authenticity is deciding first for yourself who you are, what that means, what makes you different, like having that clarity in yourself, and then showing up fully. So being vulnerable, allowing for the imperfections to show, not feeling like you have to curate yourself or like be an artist versus just like be an artist. And this is hard because so many of us like are conditioned differently. But as you show up consistently in yourself, in all the rawness of who you are, then your audience will start to see that, trust that, get to know you. And what you're doing is building a true relationship with your fans. And one of the things that we always come back to, like, this is not, office hours is not about shortcuts. Office hours is not about hacking the algorithm. It's not about bots and AI. It's about building genuine, authentic relationships with an audience who will support you and allow you to build a career on them. People who will spend money on you, who will show up for you, who will use their social capital for you. And so that process of building that relationship with your audience, when you're clear in yourself, you're unapologetic about yourself, and you show up fully and wholly, is how that connection is going to happen. And that's how you build, as an independent, small artist, that's how you're going to build that audience. Basically, keep it real.
Right. Exactly. Our last couple episodes have been kind of long, but here we are. Let us know in the comments again, about how you feel about authenticity and branding, because it's always a complicated conversation, and every artist I work with, that conversation is different. And so let us know how you're feeling below, and what struggles or successes that you've seen in being authentic with your brand and whatnot. Leave a like button if you leave a like button. My God, hit the like button if. Oh my God, hit the like button if. Hit the like button if you found something useful in the episode. Please subscribe. because Team Candace or Team Monique is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Nora's been pissing me off since yesterday with her wild ass takes. I can't believe it. But yes, get a website, get a newsletter, drink some water. Okay, it's hot out there. Okay, talk nice to yourself for once. You're doing absolutely fine out here. Give yourself some motherfucking credit. If you need that one-on-one work, both me and Nora are available, but we also do work as a team. And yeah, seriously, let us know about Candace or Monique because I need to know. Okay, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Yep.
And be safe. Peace.
Peace.
Okay, hit the end.